Hi, and a warm welcome to the third episode of the Best is Yet to Come conversations. I have today a wonderful guest, Cathy Garner. A little bit background about how we met 7 years ago in London. And it's quite a magical story because we wouldn't have this conversation if it wasn't for us meeting 7 years ago, because that's how I was learning to show up on social media and express my own voice. And Cathy was part of a beautiful community, a coach helping us do that. So, with that said, I want to warmly welcome you, Cathy, here. And I want you to introduce yourself and share a little bit because you have such beautiful work that you do and the most amazing energy. And I know viewers are going to love everything that you share. And you have the coolest title too. So I'm going to let you now introduce yourself better.
Thank you, Sana. It's so lovely to be here, and it's so lovely to see you and to feel your energy because you're so full of just love, and it's very warm and very welcoming. And I suppose that's one of the things that I try to do online is to create spaces where people feel loved. So I have your online community, which is the kind of umbrella space, if you like, where I do everything I do. I'm one of these multi-passionate women who has lots of interests, but they all tie nicely together. So I'm sure that will resonate with some people watching because, we get this one precious human life. And there's so much richness and so much to experience, so much to do in this world. And yeah, it's like it's all really good fun. And you mentioned my name. It was actually my TEDx speaker coach who named me the relationship artist. I'd been calling myself, I think, the artist coach. Not because I coached artists, although artists were being drawn to me at the time, perhaps because of the name, but because in my coaching, I was using art, I still use art, to help people to see themselves differently, help people to visualize concepts that would be helpful. So, in fact, one of them that I used quite a lot is this concept of the relationship. So I'll often have my flip chart up behind me if I'm teaching or coaching. And what I'll do is I'll help people to think about their relationships as if they are, a tall ship. And you want to sail the stormy seas of life with one other person for the rest of your life. This is a huge challenge. And so, what do you need to get through the waves and the storms? You need a really strong ship. And so I teach that each part of the ship, the hull, the sails, the navigation system, each part of the ship actually helps us to think about something that is essential to our relationships. So maybe we'll unpack that if we have a little bit of time as we're chatting. Anyway, so she said, you are the relationship artist. So that's been my name really ever since 2019 when I did my TEDx talk on the science of love and relationships. And one of the most fun things I do is to capture people's vision of their future and draw it into their face. Almost, it's like writing portraits. And I think when I try and describe this to people, they look a bit quizzical because in a way you have to see it. And I know that some people will be listening to this, but if you can imagine that in the face is actually made up of words. Now I'm showing this. If you're on YouTube watching, you'll see that you can see the words empathy, integrity, and wisdom in the chin. This is my dad's portrait. And as you pull it back, you stop seeing the words and you see the face. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about how powerful these things are. But that's my most fun thing to do. So I also help to launch other teachers online. So I've created some meditation and mentoring spaces where really wonderful spiritual teachers deliver and gather people together, and I support them and I co-host their sessions as well. So yeah, lots of fun stuff going on in your online community.
I absolutely love it. And it's so beautiful how you combine the artistic expression and it just oozes with from you the love and the relationship, like the importance of helping with that, but then your artistic expression. And I love the portraits. They're so beautiful. And I would love to know that how has it always been like part of you, this, or is it what's the story behind you getting all this, like igniting like all this expression and the relationship artist title? How did you come to it?
Well, that's a good question because of course most of us have probably experienced dark times in our lives, and often the joy comes from those times. You may have heard people talk about the lotus growing from the mud. And my beginnings as a relationship coach came from a time when I was really low. I had been in a 12-year relationship that ended, and then went into another relationship and another relationship. And there's a little poem. Oh gosh, it's by Porter, and she says, "I must go on till ends my rope. Who from my birth was cursed with hope? A heart in half is chaste, archaic, but mine resembles a mosaic. The things become ridiculous. Why am I so? Why am I thus?" So, in a way, my relationship coaching came out of heartbreak. And it wasn't just the one. I was at a party one year, and year after year, I was going to this same friend's party. And as the years progressed, all of the others who came, all my other friends who came, were coupling up. I'd been coupled, I'd uncoupled. And in my late 20s, I was the only single girl at the party. And I was telling the story of my latest relationship disaster. And my friend pulled me aside by the barbecue and he said, "There's only one common denominator in all your relationship failures, Kath." I was like, "Ooh, ouch." It was me. And I realized that I couldn't just keep blaming the men in my life for not being what I wanted them to be. I had to really look deeper and figure out what is this thing that we call love and how do you do it well? At the same time, I was really inspired to leave my job, my job in one of the top universities in the UK. It was a fantastic job. I loved it. I loved my colleagues. It was really fun. But what I realized as I was teaching team building and relationship skills to leaders, I realized that my words were coming just a little way outside myself. You know, when you feel that you're not really speaking completely from the heart. And I was particularly in this one meeting that I remember vividly, where the leaders, the heads of departments, and the PIs, the principal investigators, the researchers, were standing around, and I was teaching something, and I felt myself almost as if I was above my right shoulder, looking down on myself, and my words were coming from about a foot outside my body, and they were quite sensible and probably very helpful, but they weren't coming from me. And I knew that somebody else could do this just as well, if not better. And so I recognized that my uniqueness wasn't being expressed in my work. And I really wanted to live from my heart. I really wanted to do my thing on the planet and to contribute in a way that only I could. And I think this is for all of us, this message that we've got this powerful and quite extraordinary thing within us that is, it's our life force. And as that life force bubbles up, always got a choice. Do we follow it or do we suppress it? Do we listen to those voices of others telling us who we should be, what we should be like? what we should do. Do we listen to our own fears? Or do we say, okay, I'm going to follow that glimmer. I'm going to follow that spark of aliveness. And I've come to call it my joy compass now. So I set out in 2005 was when I left my roles. 2006, the beginning of 2006, I set out with the motto, earn less, live more. And I literally just jumped. My dad said, what about your pension? And I literally leapt out into the unknown. And I found that as I stepped into my joy and followed the little glimmers of just this little direction towards going out into rural India and working with women's self-help groups, or going into the desert with the Bedouin, or helping organize an astronomy festival in South Africa, all these little opportunities which came to me. I just followed those glimmers and I found myself walking across rural Gujarat in Gandhi's footsteps on the Salt March. I have a portrait that I've done of Gandhi, full of some of his teachings. Um, and as I walked, I learnt two things really. One was how to do this thing called love, and the other was how to live from a place of vision, because people without vision perish. We all suffer when we squash our vision down. And when we allow ourselves to see our future clearly and brightly and follow those little glimmers, we get to live a life that's so much fuller and so much freer. And we contribute better when we're coming from that place of aliveness. So that was, I also call it my desperate decade of dating. Was it desperate? I don't know. I had a lot of interesting experiences and met a lot of wonderful people. And eventually, I met my husband now, and we've been married for 15 years. And all of the things that I've learned have enabled me to actually have this amazing life that I have now. I was telling you earlier, wasn't I, about the chandelier? I During this time of singledom, I was part of an artist circle in Bristol, and it was really fun. The facilitator, a friend of mine, would get us to do exercises each week. And there was one week in particular that I remember. She filled the room with magazines, big stacks of magazines, and there were National Geographics, and there were House and Home, and there were Cosmopolitans, and I don't know, there were all these wonderful travel and fashion and home and garden and nature and all these wonderful magazines. And what she said was just tear out or cut out anything that appeals to you and create a collage. Now, at the time, I had no idea what a vision board was. I don't think it was a very common thing back then. This is a long time ago. And so I started tearing out all these images, and right in the middle of my of this collage, I I did a picture that I found in a fashion magazine, I think, of a woman swinging naked on a dark coloured chandelier, right in the middle. And then all around it, there were pictures of dark carved furniture and people in exotic places and castles. There was a ship. Actually, I think there were even two pictures of a small ship. And I'd forgotten most of this. So the second half of this creative circle that day was writing a postcard to yourself from the future. This is an exercise that I also do with my clients, and it's such a powerful exercise. She said, write a portrait to yourself from 3 months in the future. So I thought, gosh, 3 months, what do I really want 3 months from now? And I thought, well, no one's going to read it. I thought, I've met this man and we're talking late into the night and it's deep and it's meaningful and blah, blah, blah. And then she said, now I'd like you to write a postcard from a year in the future. And I thought, we're married, we're planning a family. Do you know, this was me just being, in a way, I thought it was me being silly. It was my heart's desire, but I would never have dared to say at that time because I had such a strong identity as this woman who'd been single for so long. And um, and then she said, and now I'd like you to read your postcards to the person sitting next to you. Can you imagine? I was utterly mortified, but I did it. There was a lovely girl next to me called Lucy who was very sweet and very gentle and kind and compassionate. And with utter shame, I read these desires of my heart to this lovely girl. And then I think I folded them up or threw them away or whatever. But I also folded up this vision picture, this vision board, and I put it in a box in a bag in the back of a cupboard, and it traveled with me from house to house. And I didn't rediscover it for another 2 years. And in that time, after 3 months, I had met the man who is now my husband. We were talking late into the night by candlelight. Within a year, we were married and we were planning a family. And 2 years later, I found this thing in this box in a bag in the back of a cupboard. And I opened it. I was like, oh, the chandelier. And this chandelier is on our kitchen ceiling. And how did I do that? There's a part of our brain which scans the world for our desires when we become really, really clear about what our desires are. And I think this is what happened from that time, from that vision board. And that's what happens when I create these vision portraits. So I've created portraits. You can see the one that I did. This was actually a legacy portrait I did when my dad had passed. And it was my grieving process in a way, just describing this wonderful man who was, yes, just such a fantastic father. But I've also done portraits of couples and individuals. I wonder if I can probably find one. Hang on. Sure, there's one here. Oh, here we go. So there was a woman that I worked with who had been single for 6 years. She'd not even been on a date in 6 years. And she came to me and she said she wanted to be in a relationship. Now, for 6 months, we worked on her relationship skills, and all of her relationships started to transform. So her relationship with her mum improved, her relationship with all her colleagues. She held down a job for that whole 6 months. I don't think she'd had a long-term job for a long time. And every time I said to her, well, maybe you should start dating now, she'd give me this slightly dirty look. And I don't know what she was hoping for, but maybe like all of us, that vulnerability that it takes to really get out there, to put ourselves out there, to risk rejection was just that little bit too dangerous until she created her vision board. So I got her to do this same thing with the pictures, and then I got her to talk me through it. I recorded her words and I wrote her portrait. 3 days after she received this portrait, she started dating, and she carried on dating until she fell in love and he fell in love with her. So that was like 3 days. Suddenly, she was seeing herself differently. Now, I told that story to another couple who I had drawn a portrait of. And you can see a little bit there. I don't know if you can read any of those words.
Wow, it's just incredible.
But they came to me and they were drifting a little, and they didn't see how their visions of their life gelled. In fact, they hadn't really unpacked or talked about their vision fully. And they were sitting on my sofa, and he was started to talk about leadership, and she looked at him like, wow. And then she started to talk about her career. She didn't really want a career. She felt like she ought to be excited about her career, but she really just wanted to be a homemaker, not very, not very modern in some respects. But this was her. She was just a wonderful, again, a really lovely person who created beautiful spaces where people really do feel loved. Anyway, within 3 months, when I told them the story of the single woman who started, dating and falling in love, they said, well, the same thing happened for us. They said he was headhunted to a leadership position, and he'd never even mentioned leadership to his wife before, let alone at work. And within the year, he got two or three more promotions. He was getting promoted and promoted and promoted. And he said he put it down to seeing, I don't know if you can read this, but there's lead with integrity in his eyebrow. And he said he put it down to seeing that every day on his study wall. And so I think what this that is like having a vision board in your face. And even if it's just subconsciously, we see ourselves differently. And then we start to live differently and we scan the world and pick out those things that will actually help us to make progress towards our true vision. So, you know what it's like when you're in a crowded room and even above all the noise, you'll suddenly hear your name being mentioned. And it's a little bit like that. When we get clear and we've got that vision and we've got the words of our vision almost looking back at us through our own eyes, it's like we scan the world and we hear all the opportunities. And then we've got the choice, do we follow our joy compass? Do we follow those opportunities? So, yeah, so it's a very exciting process. I love taking people through the vision portrait process. Yeah, I could tell you all sorts of stories of wonderful people, but maybe I'll give you, I don't know if you've got any questions you want to ask.
You are so, you know what, it just oozes like the joy, the love, the passion from you. And thank you, Kathy, for sharing your story. Wonderful to hear it and the background, and then it makes it all so beautiful and so powerful. Then the visioning and you sitting there in the room with the black chandelier and everything coming to life, and then helping others do the same. It's just incredible. And with seeing that those vision boards or visions portrait that you make of the words and really are helping others embody themselves with those words, it's so powerful and so beautiful. And I want to hear just say that you really create like an experience, and that makes it easier to embody it. And like you said, that you have to kind of live it, like believe it, and you helped it in that way that you create that experience. And I would love for you to share. You had a treasure box too. You have the compass, and then you have the sailing boat, which is already, I love those, but share about the treasure box because that I
My
love.
treasure chest.
Yeah.
If I'm working with a couple, I've created something called the relationship method, and it's 12 proven practices for lasting love. And really, this came out of that conversation with my friend when he said, you know, you're the common denominator in all your relationship disasters. And so I went and I did the research. And 2003, I wrote my dissertation on barriers to effective communication for my master's degree. And then I discovered the Gottmans and the incredible work that they've been doing over what is now 50 years, studying couples, looking at hundredths of a second interactions between couples, straight couples, same-sex couples, seeing what is it that really bonds a couple and helps them to sail those stormy seas and stay strong together. And what is it that makes a relationship disintegrate? And it turns out that there is a really clear set of skill sets, set of practices that we can learn. Nobody teaches us in school. I mean, we leave school really ill equipped for the world. Some of the most useful skills are just never taught. And I think relationship skills are the most important skill that we can pass on to the next generation. But of course, how can we pass it on if we don't really understand it ourselves? What people often think if they're in a great relationship is that it's fate, it's luck. You know, the gods just blessed me with this relationship, or, you know, the stars aligned and everything was wonderful. But what I've noticed as I've watched happy couples is that I've seen they're doing all of these little skills, little practices, and it's almost like having a checklist. I can have my 12 practices and I'll watch a couple. I remember, in fact, a conversation I had right at this table where she was like, no, it's all fate, she said. And she had a great relationship with her husband. And he pinged her a message just as we were chatting. And, some people might go, oh, I won't respond to that right now. And, of course, you don't need to respond immediately. I'm not saying you should. But what I noticed in her relationship was that she did respond, just a quick little positive little message back. Um, and she showed appreciation for him. She always saw the best in him. It was like she was wearing her rose tinted glasses. Um, and she would tell me all the good things about him. And so anyway, it was like ticking off this checklist. And so she can say it's fate. And I think the lesson for me is if you are doing these 12 practices, you will feel like your relationship is fated and meant to be. But coming back to the treasure chest, so this analogy of being on a ship together for your whole life means you need the treasure chest and you need to understand these practices. So there are 12 gifts in everyone's treasure chest. And each time that we meet, usually I meet people on Zoom, so it's remote, but I've sent them their treasure chest. And inside they find little parcels like this, or little scrolls like this. And then each week they're labeled with a letter, and the letter corresponds to the skill or the practice that we're working with. And so they get to unroll them. And it may be that they unfold their happily ever island. And we start to talk about what is your vision? Where is the treasure buried in your relationship? Where are there mountains to climb? What's resourcing you? What's the kind of the springs of water in your relationship? And people really get to look at their relationships differently. And there's something really powerful about that, because what we tend to do when things are going wrong is we look at our partner, and we don't look at them through rose-tinted spectacles. We tend to look at them. I don't know if I've got my magnifying glass. Yes. We tend to look at them through the magnifying glass of all the things that are wrong in our relationship, or all the things that are wrong with them specifically. And instead, when you've got this idea that your relationship is in between you, it's not them, it's a thing in itself. It's a relationship. And we just need to care for this ship. Sometimes the best choice in your relationship is not a choice for me and it's not a choice for you. It's a choice for what's best for the ship. And if I explain the ship a little bit, if we want to sail the stormy seas of life, we need a strong hull. We need a sound hull of friendship. This represents that lovely connection that we can have with somebody and all the friendship skills. So friendship isn't just one thing. There are 5 friendship skills that I teach that go through, how do we love to give and receive love? How do we appreciate one another? How are we spending our time together? And they're simple things that you can do even and perhaps especially when you're not feeling all those feelings of gushing love. So that's why it's so powerful, because you start with the hull. Quite often when we go to therapy or counselling, we'll be asked what's going wrong in our relationship. And I've had clients come to me who've been to traditional counselling, and they've come and they've said, it was awful. They said it was like pointy finger blame. He did this, she did that. And it feels wrong, it feels uncomfortable, because what we're doing is we're asking somebody else to ally with us. We're asking the therapist to empathize with us, and maybe they will, and we'll have this bond. The bond will go between the person and the therapist. But what you really want is the bond to go between you and your partner. So when I'm working with people, I start by building up their friendship. And they are not allowed, so I'm very strict in a nice way, but they're not allowed to talk about the difficult things until they've built up this friendship. Because until you've done this bit, there's nowhere that you can sit to really unpack and mend the sails. Because, of course, emotion is the wind in the sails of our relationship. And so this part of the ship is all about how do we manage our emotions? How do we reef the sails? How do we draw in the sails when there's a storm brewing? Because we don't want all our emotions to be hanging out when things are difficult. We actually want to be able to go, okay, let's just wait until this big storm is over, and then we'll start to, if the sails have been torn, we can sit on deck and we can actually mend them together. We can heal. We can solve the challenges. And sometimes, in fact, in 69% of cases, the challenge itself is unsolvable. This is one of the research findings, which is funny, isn't it? It's like when we go to therapy or counseling, often the therapist will start talking about let's do some conflict resolution, let's do some communication skills. Neither of those two things will actually bring the love back. A lot of your conflicts will never be resolved, but people in great relationships learn to manage that. And there's a whole load of teaching I could do about that, which I won't do now. I don't think we've got time. But the third part of the ship is the bit that most people neglect, and that's the navigation system. So that this is actually missing a little bit, this ship, because it doesn't have a crow's nest. What we really want to be able to do is to climb up the mast into the crow's nest, look out and catch a glimpse of our happily ever island and sail towards it. Use the ship's wheel as well as our joy compass to take us towards our goal. We talked about the island earlier. So we've got our island. And the ship's wheel is all about the little things that we do, the little rituals of connection that we have in our relationship. And each of the spokes on the ship's wheel represents an aspect of your relationship that you can build rituals of connection around. And once you've got this stuff solid and strong, it's very easy to sail towards your joy and away from the iceberg. So there are 4 things that you really have to avoid in a relationship if you want your ship to stay afloat. So it's all fun and it's all kind of metaphor. So if you love metaphor, this stuff helps because a couple might come back, and this has happened before where someone's, rather than saying, oh, we fell out and we had this terrible conflict, they've come back and they've said, oh, there was a bow wave this week. And what they meant was, this wave came over the ship. It felt a little bit overwhelming at the time, but because it was just a bow wave, they didn't personalize it. They didn't make it your problem. They didn't say, oh, it's my problem. They didn't shrivel. They didn't become less in themselves. They were able to stay intact and just look at the ship and go, okay, we need to mend the sails here, or we need to do some work on one of the planks of friendship, or one of the sails, or maybe we just need to get the rituals of connection a little bit stronger. So it's all fun.
I love it, Kathy, and I think it's so beautiful the way you do it. It's so unique too. Like you mentioned about the traditional therapy and focusing on the problem, and you have focusing on sailing together to get, and the friendship foundation of that is so important that it's often not really emphasized in many relationships, and that's like the most important thing I believe myself. I've come to learn it's so important. I love you make it fun, like an adventure. So it's like takes already the heaviness. You get to go out of the heaviness into to doing something like fun and remembering with the metaphors. I think it's absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for everything that you do and sharing it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure. It is fun. And life is that journey, isn't it? I was thinking as I was thinking about our conversation, I was thinking it really is a journey. It's like a pilgrimage. We will have highs and we'll have lows. And our job is just to take those things and to ask, what's here for me to learn? If this is happening in my life, how can I suppose you might say, how can I suck the marrow out of life? But how can I really find a way to either surrender or create a kind of powerful response to this challenge? And ultimately, I think as We are individuated sparks of spirit, busy with a human experience. We've got these two things happening all the time. We've got this inner purpose, which is about aligning ourselves with our soul, with spirit, with whatever you want to call this kind of higher element of us. Some would call it God, some would just call it humanity, perhaps, or the universe, or source energy. We've got that purpose, which we can achieve in an instant. We can instantly go from living this outer shell of a life to living an inner life, and to recognizing that we are just these incredible beings that are just busy being human. And so, of course, then we've got this humanness, and we can have a purpose for our humanness too. So it's like these twin purposes. One is an inner and one is an outer purpose. So I think that's the joy of being human, is that we get to create our lives. There's no map. There's there's wisdom from, generations, from eons, but we get to choose day after day after day these tiny little choices, these tiny little twists of the wheel, these tiny little, the direction on the compass. You go 1 degree in a different direction and you land up somewhere very, very different. So we get to choose and create our lives. And it's just such a gift to be the creator, to be the author of our lives, to write our own vision, and see it looking back at us through our own eyes, and just iterate day by day to become a little bit more and perhaps also a little bit less, letting go, surrendering our humanness, because, of course, ultimately we are on a journey to leave our human bodies, and who knows what's next. So we need to hold this precious little life and do something wonderful with it.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. And I'm sure so many can get so much out of that. Thank you for sharing. Cathy, I want to ask you some fun questions, and you answer whatever comes to mind, the first thing. Don't overthink, just whatever comes the first thing to mind. Are you up for it?
I'm up for it.
All right. First one. Uh, a dream place you would like to visit.
First one, Andaman and Nicobar's. They are fairly unexplored. They're not really on the tourist map. Tourists go there, but they're fairly unknown little islands off the coast of India. And then second would be the Galapagos. I've always wanted to go to the Galapagos Islands. So yeah, I guess islands are a theme there, but
Yeah.
Costa Rica, lots of places. But yeah.
Love it. Um, what is something that you would happily outsource?
Oh, my accounts. Anything to do with spreadsheets, actually. I think I'm slightly, what's the word? Oh, yeah, I just have a kind of blindness for spreadsheets. So when I'm doing even things that really would normally be done on a spreadsheet, I normally put them into little circles and color the circles, even on my documents. This is, I don't normally talk about this. I'm going a bit red.
Now it came.
Yeah,
I love
outsource
it.
that for sure.
I love it. What's a quality that you truly love in a person?
Wisdom.
Hmm.
Wisdom, I think, is certainly right now in my life. I feel that wisdom is the most important quality. If we can embody wisdom, then we have such a gift to share, and our own lives will be blessed, and we'll bless others. Yeah, and whatever happens on the outside, we'll get to walk a really valuable path, because, we've got these little lives and we can do so much. And with wisdom, we can do even more good in the world.
I love it. Love the answer. A favorite way to relax?
Mm, chocolate.
I love it.
I love chocolate. In fact, chocolate is the reason I'm here because many, many years ago, I was 14 and I'd always thought to myself, I really should give something up for Lent one sometime. People around me, my friends at school would be giving up chocolate for Lent. And every year I kind of thought maybe I should, and I never quite could. But when I was 14, I decided this year I'm going to give up TV, for Lent. And so for 40 days, I didn't watch TV. And TV was quite a normal thing in our house. It was on, after we got home from school, the TV would just kind of be on. And my dad was wonderful. He'd sit in a chair. He had arthritis, so he was quite crippled. And he'd sit in his chair and he would watch TV while he was writing his lectures for university. And so the TV was kind of just there. But I stopped watching TV for 40 days and I realized I had so much more life. And so I never went back. And what I guess my whole life has become richer and more meaningful. And I've just had time to do amazing things, to travel the world, to I feel like I've had many lives in the course of my 52 years. And yeah, that's all from not wanting to give up chocolate and giving up TV instead.
Wow,
I
you
do
never
watch
know
films
where you
now. Sorry.
you never know where what that it came that beautiful story and quite a big one in your journey too from that question. Love it.
Yeah, it was quite a big one. I have to give a disclaimer. I do watch a lot of films with my kids now, and we love it. We love watching films together.
That's wonderful. What's part of your best is yet to come?
Do you know, when I saw that your podcast was called The Best Is Yet to Come, and a memory came to me immediately, a very powerful, actually quite poignant memory came to me. Because when I was walking in Gandhi's footsteps, I think I showed you earlier my little portrait of Gandhi, when we were walking for 24 days on the Salt March, this was the campaign that Gandhi, he brought together followers and they campaigned peacefully. It was non-violent kind of resistance, non-cooperation with the British. So this was really the breaking point. The Salt March was the breaking point in the British hold on India back in the 40s. And actually, so the Salt March was in the 30s. That's right. 1930, in fact. And so I went to India and 600 people were celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Salt March. And there were only 50 people from internationals. Most people were either Indian or from Pakistan. And these 50 internationals, we were treated so beautifully. I mean, the hospitality that we received was extraordinary. And it's a blessing. I always feel this huge debt to India for the love and the blessings that they lavished on us. But anyway, one day I was telling one of the other internationals, I think she was some Unitarian church minister. I was saying about my heartbreak. I was saying that this was my previous partner. I said, he had the best of my life. He had the best of me. And she said, no, honey. She said, the best is yet to come.
Oh, I love that.
I know. And at the time, it felt so impossible that the best was yet to come because this had been such a precious relationship. And I was so heartbroken at the end of that particular romance. And for her to say the best is yet to come was like a promise. It was like a little torch that I could hold in front of me, a little light that would help me to get through those really hard years. And so I've always remembered those words and always felt really grateful for that glimmer that she gave me. The best is yet to come. So for me now, the best is always coming. But what I'd love for my outer purpose, I would love to see a world in which young people were really equipped to love well and to live with purpose. I would love to find people who I could collaborate with who would help that to become a reality, to bring these skills. It's just 3 things to remember: a great friendship, ways to manage your emotions, and how to navigate. And the 4 relationship icebergs to avoid. If young people left school just knowing 3 things, 3 great things to do in your relationship, 4 things to avoid, how many relationships would be built on that foundation and would flourish and would see, just a much happier and more fulfilled world. So that would be, if I could contribute something really, really wonderful to the planet, that would be my contribution, along with lots of other vision portraits, so that people are really living with their sense of vision, and from that inner spark. Yeah, that's hopefully my best to come, but we'll see. We
It
will
is,
see.
it is, you are doing it already, and it will. It all makes a difference, Kathy. I believe it 100%. So keep on doing it, and it's coming.
It's each little
Beautiful.
day, each little
Yes,
step forward.
yes, absolutely. How can anyone who is listening and now in awe with Kathy and oh my goodness, I want to learn more from her. I want to connect with her. I need her help. I want her to make a portrait. How can they find you? What's ways to connect with you?
Well, the
Find.
easiest is to go to my website, which is the simplest version of my website is just Cathy. So I'm Curly Cathy, Cathy with a C, Cathy.love. So Cathy.love, or cathygarner.com. But Cathy.love is quite sweet.
I love
If you go
it.
there, you will find my website, and on it there are the programs for Love Again for people who are single, a 6-month program where you really get to fall in love with yourself, to fall in love with your life, to get the skills to get out there, to know who you want to share your life with, and to become magnetic to that person who you can sail the stormy seas with. So that's Love Again. There's a link there for Love for Life, which is for couples who really want to strengthen their relationship and really get through those storms. That's a bit of a shorter course. And for my vision portraits as well, and one-to-one coaching. So you can just contact me through the website, or you can email Cathy at cathygarner.com. And I think we'll probably pop them in the comments as well.
Yes, let's do that. You can share them with me and I'll put them in the comments. Thank you so much. Finally, do you have any closing words of wisdom or any words of inspiration want to leave the viewers with?
Maybe 2. You may have heard that quote, "What will you do with your one wild and precious life?" And I love that. And I also love a quote by Martha Graham that you may know, which is that she says, "There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost." So the wisdom really there, I guess, is what will you do with your one wild and precious life? What is that unique expression that's longing to come out of you, and be embodied in your life?
Oh my goodness. So beautiful. So good to end with that. I love it. And beautiful quotes. Thank you for sharing, Kathy. And thank you so much for this beautiful conversation with you. I have loved everything that you shared, and it's so needed in our world. And there's so many who are, I'm sure, so inspired and hopefully connect with you. They feel called in their heart to get a portrait or help or just learn from you. So thank you so much for your
Oh, well,
time.
thank you as well, Sana. You're a wonderful interviewer. There's something that Nancy Klein says, which is that the quality of a response that you get is a function of the quality of the listening. So when we create spaces for each other that are full of love and acceptance and kind of lifting each other up, what we find is that we're able to give more in that space. So you've created a beautiful space here where I'm sure, as well as myself, I'm sure all your other guests will just really be able to share wonderful things with the world through your listening and your, yeah, and the beautiful hosting you do of this space. Thank you, Sana.
Oh, thank you so much. That warms my heart. And I will say that I'm gonna eat my own words a little bit because I will the close this conversation with one thing I always say in the end. So I'm gonna steal the end anyways. Uh, I want to thank the viewers for taking time to watch, and I want to remind you that remember that it's all within you, that you got this, and your best is definitely yet to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Sana. Beautiful.
Thank you.
What a lovely way to end.